I'm Veronica, I'm 32 years old, and I was the lead architect of a 9-figure software project called Chimera. I say was because, 2 weeks before the most important investor meeting in my company's history, the meeting that would decide our future, my boss, Marcus, took my name off the project, put his own on it, and told me my new role was to get him coffee and make sure his presentation slides were in the right order. He was going to present my life's work as his own masterpiece. What he didn't know was that I had built a secret into the very heart of the code, a truth protocol only I could activate. Before I tell you how a single command line exposed him, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about professional revenge and workplace justice. It feels strange to even say the words, my life's work at 32, but that's what Chimera was. I joined Innovatech 6 years ago, employee number 7. It was a classic startup dream, founded by a brilliant but chaotic coder named David, who had a vision but none of the discipline to build it. He hired me straight from a stable but boring job at a tech giant, and I took the risk because I saw the genius in his idea. The company was just a handful of us, in a cramped office that always smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. We were building a revolutionary data analytics platform. David would sketch wild concepts on a whiteboard, and I was the one who translated his brilliant scribbles into clean, scalable, and functional architecture. For 5 years, I was the bedrock. I wrote the first lines of code, designed the core database structure, and mentored every new engineer who came through the door, including a bright-eyed junior developer named Liam, who joined us a couple of years back. Our culture was one of pure meritocracy. The best idea won, no matter who it came from. We were a team, a family even, bonded by late nights, shared pizzas, and the thrilling belief that we were creating something that would change our industry. Project Chimera was the culmination of all that effort, the next generation version of our platform, and it was my baby. I had designed every single module, every API, every single intricate piece of its logic. It was more than a project, it was a reflection of my professional soul. Then, about a year ago, David, our founder and CEO, decided to step back. He had made his money and wanted to travel the world. He was replaced by a board-approved CEO, a polished executive named Mr. Harris, who spoke in corporate jargon and cared more about optics than code. His first major hire was a man named Marcus Thorne, our new vice president of product. Marcus arrived like a character from a movie about Wall Street, all expensive suits, a blindingly white smile, and a vocabulary comprised entirely of buzzwords like synergy, optimization, and paradigm shift. In his first all-hands meeting, he spoke for 30 minutes without saying a single concrete thing. I remember turning to Liam and whispering, "He has no idea what we actually do, does he?" Liam, ever the optimist, just shrugged and said to give him a chance. That was my first mistake. There were warning signs, of course, little red flags that fluttered in the periphery of my vision. In retrospect, they were more like giant, flashing neon billboards that I chose to ignore out of a misguided sense of loyalty to the company I had helped build. The change in culture was gradual at first, a slow poisoning of the well. The meritocracy we cherished began to erode, replaced by a culture of politics and presentation. It was no longer about the quality of your work, but the quality of your PowerPoint deck. The first direct encounter I had with Marcus's unique brand of management was about a month after he started. We had a persistent, nagging bug in one of our older legacy systems. It was a low-priority issue, but it annoyed a handful of our longtime clients. I spent a weekend digging through ancient code nobody had touched in years and found the flaw. It was a simple fix, a single line of code, but it required a deep understanding of the system's architecture to even locate. On Monday, I pushed the fix, and in the weekly summary email I noted, resolved the legacy data caching bug. The next day, in the executive leadership meeting, I later heard from my old boss, who was still in the engineering department. Marcus presented a single slide. It read, "Proactive infrastructure optimization, resolved persistent data caching bug, enhancing stability for key legacy clients." He had taken my quiet weekend work and spun it into a strategic initiative he had personally overseen. My old boss, a good man named Robert, confronted him about it privately. Marcus's response was a masterclass in corporate deflection. He said he was elevating the team's work to give it the visibility it deserved at the executive level. He claimed it was about creating a narrative of success. Robert warned me then. He said, "Veronica, this guy isn't a builder, he's a narrator. Be careful, he'll steal your story if you let him." I should have listened more closely. A few months later, Robert, tired of the new politics, resigned. His departure left a power vacuum, and Marcus, with his silver tongue and close relationship with the new CEO, was more than happy to fill it, extending his influence over the engineering teams. He began scheduling ideation sessions for Project Chimera. I would sit in these meetings, the actual architect of the system, and listen to Marcus use my own roadmap documents to explain his vision to other department heads. He was a brilliant parasite. He'd absorb my technical briefs, learn the key phrases, and then regurgitate them in a slightly different order, adorned with his corporate buzzwords. He never had a single original idea. Not one. His entire contribution was to rename features I had already designed. My dynamic data ingestion module became his synergistic inflow pipeline. It was infuriating, like watching someone put a new, ugly cover on a book you had written and then claim they were the author. I tried to correct him once in a meeting. He had completely misunderstood a core concept about our encryption protocol and was explaining it incorrectly to the marketing team. I politely interjected, "Actually, Marcus, the key rotation works a bit differently. It's based on a polymorphic algorithm to prevent—" He cut me off with a patronizing smile. "Veronica, thank you," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We appreciate your technical depth, but let's try to keep this at a 30,000-foot view for the non-engineers in the room. We don't want to get lost in the weeds." The room went quiet. I felt my face flush with a mixture of anger and humiliation. He had not only dismissed my expertise, but had framed it as a social failing, as if being correct was somehow impolite. Liam, who was in the meeting to take notes, looked at me with wide, sympathetic eyes. After the meeting, he caught up with me at my desk. "That was unbelievable," he muttered, shaking his head. He had no idea what he was talking about, and he made you look like the difficult one. I just nodded, staring at the lines of code on my screen, the very code Marcus had just so confidently misrepresented. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just dealing with an ambitious manager. I was dealing with a corporate sociopath, someone who would burn down everything I had built just to warm his hands by the fire. The injustice was no longer a series of small paper cuts. It was becoming a gaping wound, and I knew, with a sinking feeling in my gut, that the worst was yet to come. The true assault on my work, the moment the slow erosion became a full-blown landslide, happened about 6 months before the big investor presentation. We were on the cusp of a major milestone for Project Chimera, the integration of a predictive analytics engine. This wasn't just another feature, it was the core innovation, the secret sauce that would put us light years ahead of our competition. I had spent nearly a year designing it, working with a small, dedicated team, including Liam, to build it from scratch. It was complex, elegant, and it worked flawlessly. We were preparing for an internal company-wide demo. I had spent weeks crafting the presentation, building the demo script, and preparing to showcase the culmination of a year of intense effort. 48 hours before the demo, I got an email from Marcus. The subject line was simply, "Chimera Demo." The body of the email was short and chilling. "Veronica, thanks for all your hard work getting the predictive engine ready. To ensure we have a unified product-centric message, I'll be leading the presentation on Wednesday. Please send me your slides and a detailed step-by-step script of the demo walkthrough. We need to present a single, strong front. Thanks for your support." I stared at the email for a full 10 minutes, my heart pounding in my chest. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. This wasn't spinning a small bug fix. This was a brazen, daylight robbery of my most significant professional achievement. I stormed into his office, my laptop in hand with the email open. He was leaning back in his chair, feet on his desk, sipping an espresso. He looked up at me, not with surprise, but with a look of mild annoyance, as if I were an interruption. "Marcus, what is this?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm the lead architect. I built this engine. I should be the one presenting it." He took a slow sip of his coffee before answering, his eyes cold and dismissive. "Veronica," he said, as if explaining something to a child. Presentation is everything. You're a brilliant technical mind, nobody disputes that, but this is about storytelling. It's about selling the vision to the rest of the company, and eventually, to our investors. That's my expertise. Your role is to build the engine, my role is to drive the car. We all have our parts to play. The sheer audacity of his metaphor left me speechless. He was reducing my role as the architect, the designer, the creator, to that of a mechanic, while he, who couldn't even explain how the engine worked, was the star driver. I felt a surge of white-hot anger. The car wouldn't exist without me, Marcus. You have no idea how it works. You'll crash it. He actually chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. That's why I need your detailed script. Think of it as a GPS. Just give me the turn-by-turn directions, and I'll handle the rest. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a call with the CEO. He turned back to his computer, a clear dismissal. I stood there, frozen in the doorway of his glass-walled office, feeling utterly powerless. I had been outmaneuvered, not by a better engineer or a smarter strategist, but by a more ruthless politician. I walked back to my desk in a daze. Liam saw my face and knew immediately. "He's doing it, isn't he?" he asked quietly. "He's taking it." I just nodded, unable to speak. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Dr. Aris Thorne. Dr. Thorne wasn't just a board member, she was a legend. A retired computer science professor from a top-tier university, she had been one of Innovatech's first angel investors and had personally recruited me to the company. She was David's mentor and, in many ways, mine too. She represented the soul of the company we had once been, a world away from the slick corporate machine it was becoming under Mr. Harris and Marcus. I hadn't spoken to her in months, but in my desperation I dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring, her voice as crisp and precise as ever. "Veronica, what a pleasant surprise. To what do I owe the honor?" I poured out the whole story, the stolen credit, the condescending remarks, the blatant theft of the predictive engine demo. My voice cracked with frustration and a sense of betrayal that felt almost physical. I told her I was thinking of quitting. I couldn't stand to watch this man dismantle my work and parade it around as his own. I expected sympathy, maybe an offer to speak to the CEO on my behalf. Instead, she was silent for a long moment when I finished. Then she said something that changed the entire course of my thinking. "Veronica," she began, her tone firm but not unkind. "Quitting is what he wants you to do. If you leave, you hand him a complete victory. He gets the project, the credit, and your absence to blame for any future failures. Do not give him that satisfaction." I was taken aback. "So, what do I do? Just stand by and watch him burn down everything I've built?" "No," she said sharply. "You don't stand by, you document. You become the most meticulous, unimpeachable archivist of your own work. You've been playing chess like an engineer, focusing on logic and truth. Marcus is playing like a politician, focusing on perception and narrative. You need to learn his game, not to become like him, but to beat him with your own weapons, facts and evidence. Integrity is a long-term strategy, Veronica, but it requires proof." She then laid out a plan. I was to comply with Marcus's request. I was to give him the slides and the script. But I was to do so via email, creating a clear paper trail. Every request he made, every question he asked, every late-night panic call I received from him when he didn't understand something, I was to follow up with a summary email. "Marcus, per our conversation, here is the explanation for the data pipeline dependency you were asking about. Marcus, as requested, I've attached the revised code to fix the issue that arose from your suggested change to the user interface. I was to create a digital fortress of evidence, brick by meticulous brick." "He is arrogant and lazy," Dr. Thorne concluded. "Those are powerful flaws. He will underestimate you, and he will make mistakes. Your job is to be there, silently, recording every single one. The time for a confrontation will come, but it is not now. Now is the time for preparation." I hung up the phone feeling a profound shift inside me. The despair was still there, but it was now overlaid with a cold, clear sense of purpose. The righteous anger had been channeled. I was no longer a victim. I was an agent in waiting. The next morning, I sent Marcus a polite, professional email with all my presentation materials attached. Marcus, as requested, here are the slides and detailed demo script for the Chimera predictive engine presentation. Please let me know if you require any further clarification. His reply came back in minutes. X. That single, dismissive abbreviation fueled my resolve more than 1,000 insults could have. The game was on. The internal demo was a disaster, just as I had predicted, but in a way that only I and a few other engineers could truly appreciate. To the rest of the company, Marcus was a star. He stood on the auditorium stage, using my slides, my script, my words, and delivered them with a slick confidence that was undeniably impressive. He was a performer, and the audience, mostly non-technical staff from sales, marketing, and HR, ate it up. They saw a strong, decisive leader. I saw a puppet mouthing words he didn't comprehend. The disaster was in the details. During the live demo portion, he almost crashed the system twice. He clicked on the wrong module, and the screen filled with error logs. He paled for a second before recovering, making a joke about the system's robust error handling capabilities, a feature I had designed. I had to text Liam, who was sitting in the front row with a laptop, to subtly push a reset command through a back door I'd built for debugging. Marcus didn't even know it was happening. He just saw the screen magically return to normal and continued as if nothing had happened. After the presentation, he was surrounded by people congratulating him. Mr. Harris, the CEO, clapped him on the shoulder and declared, "This is the kind of bold product leadership we need." Marcus soaked it all in, a king holding court. He didn't even glance in my direction. The experience was deeply demoralizing, but I held on to Dr. Thorne's words, "Document everything." That night, I wrote a detailed entry in my private log. I noted the 2 near crashes, the exact commands Liam had to run to save the demo, and the timestamp of my text message to him. I saved a copy of the server logs that showed the error spikes and the subsequent remote reset. It felt like I was building a case for a trial that might never happen, but it was the only thing that kept me sane. In the months that followed, Marcus's power grew, and so did his arrogance. He was now the undisputed face of Project Chimera. All communications about it flowed through him. He effectively became my boss, even though my official title was still lead architect. My new unofficial role was Marcus's technical brain. He would call me at all hours with half-baked ideas that were technically impossible or would require months of work to implement. "Veronica," he'd say, full of unearned enthusiasm, "I had a shower thought. What if we could make the entire interface blue? I think blue is a more trustworthy color. Let's make that happen by Friday." I would then have to spend an hour patiently explaining how changing the entire front-end color palette wasn't like changing a font in a Word document and would require a significant refactoring of the CSS library. After each of these absurd conversations, I would send a meticulously crafted follow-up email. "Marcus, summarizing our discussion. Your request to change the UI to blue by Friday is not feasible due to X, Y, and Z. As I explained, this would impact our development sprint for the new security module. Please confirm if you wish to deprioritize security in favor of this cosmetic change." He would always reply with a short, "Stand down for now. We'll circle back." Each email was another brick in my fortress. Liam became my most crucial ally during this time. He was my eyes and ears in meetings I was no longer invited to. He would tell me how Marcus was promising features to the sales team that didn't exist, committing to deadlines that were pure fantasy. Marcus was selling a fiction, and he was counting on me to work miracles in the background to turn his lies into reality. The pressure was immense. I was working 14-hour days, not building the future, but patching the present, cleaning up the messes Marcus made. I was caught in a terrible paradox. I had to keep the project afloat because it was my creation, but every success I engineered was another feather in Marcus's cap. He was failing upwards, buoyed by my silent, uncredited labor. The real goal was now on the horizon, the Series C funding round. It was the big one, the one that would value the company in the hundreds of millions. And the entire pitch to the investors, led by the notoriously sharp and tech-savvy venture capital firm Sterling Kane, rested on a flawless, deep-dive demonstration of Project Chimera. This was the Super Bowl, and Marcus had cast himself as the star quarterback, and he decided, in his infinite wisdom, that I wasn't even fit to be on the team. The official email came 3 weeks before the investor presentation. It was from HR, a formal notification that my role was being re-scoped to better align with the company's strategic objectives. My new title was Principal Engineer, Special Projects. It was a meaningless title for a non-existent role. The email stated that I would be reporting to a different department, effective immediately, and that all my responsibilities related to Project Chimera were being transferred. It was a corporate execution, carried out with chilling, impersonal efficiency. I was being completely and utterly sidelined from the project I had given my life to for the past 6 years. The reason became clear an hour later when Marcus called me into his office. He had the gall to look sympathetic. "Veronica, I know this is tough," he began, steepling his fingers. "But the board and I feel that with the investor meeting coming up, we need a single, clear line of command on Chimera. This reorganization simplifies things. It puts product, and by extension me, in the driver's seat. Your technical skills are, of course, invaluable. And I will still need you to be available to support my preparation for the Sterling Kane meeting. We need to make sure the demo is rock solid." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He had not just stolen my project, he had officially demoted me and was now ordering me to help him perform the final act of his grand theft. I should have felt rage, but all I felt was a strange, hollow calm. It was the calm of seeing the enemy's final move, of understanding the full scope of his treachery. This was the moment Dr. Thorne had told me to prepare for. I looked at him, my face a carefully constructed mask of professional neutrality. "I understand," I said, my voice even. "What kind of support will you require?" He was visibly relieved. He had expected a fight, tears, an angry outburst. My compliance made him complacent. "Excellent, glad you're on board," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I'll need a full technical briefing, of course. A deep dive. I want to know every nut and bolt. And I'll need you to run point on the demo environment, make sure it's stable. Basically, I need you to be my technical shadow for the next 3 weeks." It was perfect. He was giving me complete control over the very system he intended to use to betray me. He was so blinded by his own arrogance, so confident in his political maneuvering, that he couldn't see the glaring tactical error he was making. He was handing the keys to the kingdom back to the deposed queen. I spent the next 2 weeks in a state of intense, focused activity. By day, I was the model of a supportive subordinate. I sat with Marcus for hours, patiently explaining the intricacies of the system. His ignorance was breathtaking. He had a surface-level understanding gleaned from my old presentations, but when it came to the deep architectural decisions, the why, behind the what, he was utterly lost. He would nod and say, right, makes sense, but I could see in his eyes that he wasn't processing any of it, he was just memorizing phrases. After each session, I would go back to my desk and send him a summary email. "Marcus, as discussed, here is the detailed breakdown of our multi-threaded processing algorithm and its impact on query latency." Every email was a time-stamped record of my knowledge and his ignorance. By night, I was working on my real project. It wasn't a malicious virus or a piece of sabotage. That wasn't my style. It was something far more elegant. It was a tool of pure, unadulterated truth. The idea for the Truth Protocol came to me late one night, fueled by cold pizza and righteous indignation. It was to be a hidden feature within Project Chimera itself, a kind of developer's diary embedded in the core code. Using a combination of the Git version control history, our internal project management tickets, and email archives, I began to build a non-editable, chronologically accurate ledger of the entire project's history. It was a digital archaeological record. It would show who wrote the first line of code for a given module, who designed the database schema, who authored the key architectural documents, and who closed the critical bug fix tickets. Every major contribution was linked to a name and a timestamp. It was beautiful in its simplicity and devastating in its implications. The masterstroke was how to access it. I couldn't build an obvious button that said, "Click here to expose Marcus." I needed a key, a trigger that only I would know and that he would never stumble upon. I created a specific, obscure command line argument that could be entered during the live demo. The command was a string of characters that looked random, but was actually an encrypted version of my mother's birthday and the date I first started at Innovatech. It was personal, memorable to me, and utterly meaningless to anyone else. Activating it wouldn't crash the demo or show an accusatory message. Instead, it would render a new, clean interface overlay on the screen, titled Project Chimera, Contribution, Authorship Ledger. It would look like a professional, built-in diagnostics tool, which, in a way, it was, a tool for diagnosing a liar. Liam, my loyal ally, was instrumental in this phase. He helped me test it on the staging server, ensuring it was completely invisible and left no trace in the standard system logs. He was nervous but excited. "This is like something out of a movie," he whispered one evening as we watched the ledger populate perfectly on the test screen. "Are you sure about this, Veronica?" "I'm sure," I said, my eyes fixed on the screen where my name appeared next to nearly every significant milestone of the project. "He's not just taking credit, Liam. He's erasing me. He's trying to rewrite history. The only way to fight that is with the truth, in its rawest form." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place just a week before the investor meeting. Liam came to my desk, his face pale. He had just come from a one-on-one meeting with Marcus, a final prep session for the demo. "You are not going to believe this," he said, his voice low. "He's terrified of the Q&A session. He knows he can't answer any real technical questions, so he had me build him a panic button." My blood ran cold. "A panic button? What does it do?" "It's a hidden keyboard shortcut," Liam explained. "If he gets a question he can't answer, he hits it, and it will intentionally crash the demo server. He's got a whole script worked out. He'll apologize profusely, blame a freak server glitch or a network connectivity issue, and promise to follow up with the investors later. It's his escape hatch." I leaned back in my chair and a slow smile spread across my face. It was the final, fatal mistake of an arrogant man. His cowardice had given me the perfect setup. His plan to feign a technical failure would be the perfect backdrop for my demonstration of technical truth. The trap was now fully set. All I had to do was wait for the mouse to take the cheese. The day of the presentation was tense. The air in the main boardroom crackled with a mixture of high-stakes pressure and feigned corporate calm. The room was gleaming, all polished mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. At the head of the table sat the delegation from Sterling Kane, led by the man himself, Mr. Sterling. He was in his late 50s with piercing grey eyes and a reputation for being able to smell bad code from a mile away. He wasn't just a money man, he had a PhD in computer science and had founded 2 successful tech companies himself before becoming a venture capitalist. He was exactly the kind of investor Marcus should have feared, but Marcus was too consumed by his own narrative to see the danger. Also in the room, sitting quietly near the back, was Dr. Aris Thorne. She was there in her capacity as a board member. She caught my eye as I took my seat along the wall with the other junior staff. I wasn't even at the main table. My role, as defined by Marcus, was to be on standby for any technical support. Dr. Thorne gave me a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. It was all the encouragement I needed. Marcus started his presentation. I had to admit, he was good. He was a master salesman. He painted a grand, sweeping vision of the future, using my work as the paint and my innovations as the canvas. He moved smoothly through the slides I had created, his voice confident and resonant. He spoke of his team's tireless efforts, his vision for the product. He used the word "I" more times than I could count. I watched Mr. Sterling's face. It was a mask of polite interest, but his eyes were sharp, analytical. He wasn't buying the performance, he was evaluating the product. Then came the live demo. Marcus walked over to the podium, a small smile playing on his lips. He started the demo script I had written for him, walking through the basic features. He was a little shaky, his movements on the keyboard slightly too deliberate, like someone trying to remember a dance routine. He successfully navigated the first few parts, the easy stuff. Then Mr. Sterling raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Mr. Thorne," he said, his voice cutting through the room, "this is all very impressive on the surface, but I'm interested in the core engine. Could you elaborate on your data serialization protocol? How are you handling object relational mapping to avoid latency with large, unstructured datasets? We've seen similar platforms fail at scale because of that specific bottleneck. The room went silent. It was a deeply technical question, a precise and deadly missile aimed right at the heart of Marcus's ignorance. It wasn't a question you could answer with buzzwords. You either knew the answer or you didn't. I watched Marcus. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple. His confident smile faltered for a fraction of a second. I saw his fingers tense near the keyboard, close to where Liam had told me the kill switch shortcut was. He was preparing to hit the panic button. He opened his mouth and started to ramble. Well, Mr. Sterling, that's an excellent question. Our approach to serialization is multifaceted and synergistic, focusing on a holistic. He was stalling, stringing together meaningless words as he prepared to crash the system and run. This was my moment. I didn't stand up, I didn't shout. I simply took out my phone and sent a single pre-written text message to Dr. Aris Thorne. It contained only 2 words. The ledger. Her phone, resting on the table in front of her, lit up. A moment later, just as Marcus was about to hit his kill switch, Dr. Thorne's voice, calm and authoritative, filled the boardroom. Marcus, that's a fascinating point on the multifaceted approach, Dr. Thorne said, her voice cutting cleanly through his nonsensical jargon. The entire room turned to look at her. Mr. Sterling lowered his hand, his gaze shifting from Marcus to her, his expression one of keen interest. Marcus froze, his hand hovering over the keyboard, a look of sheer panic briefly flashing in his eyes before being replaced by confusion. In fact, Dr. Thorne continued, her eyes locking onto Marcus's. I believe the answer to Mr. Sterling's question lies in the very architecture of the system. We should be able to see it in the development history. The project has a contribution log, does it not? A way to view the authorship of key modules. Marcus's face, which had been flushed with the effort of his performance, began to pale. He looked like a cornered animal. He had no idea what she was talking about. He stammered, A contribution log. I'm not sure that's a user-facing feature. It's more of an internal diagnostic. Oh, but I'm sure we can access it, Dr. Thorne said smoothly, her gaze then shifting from Marcus and sweeping across the room until it landed directly on me, where I sat against the wall. Veronica, she said, her voice ringing with clarity in the silent room. You were the lead architect on this project for over 5 years. I'm certain you know how to access the development ledger. Perhaps you could come up and display it for Mr. Sterling. I believe there's a specific command line argument for it, isn't there? It was a perfectly executed move. She hadn't accused him of anything. She had simply asked a question and then deferred to the expert in the room. Every head in the boardroom turned to me. The CEO, Mr. Harris, looked utterly bewildered. Marcus's face had gone from pale to a ghastly shade of grey. He was trapped. If he said the ledger didn't exist, he would look incompetent. If he admitted it did but couldn't access it, he would look even worse. His carefully constructed world was crumbling around him in slow motion. I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked toward the podium. I didn't look at Marcus, but I could feel his terrified gaze on me. I felt a dozen pairs of eyes on my back. The only face I looked at was Mr. Sterling's. He was watching me with an intensity that made it clear he understood exactly what was happening. There was a glimmer of something in his eyes, not just curiosity, but respect. I reached the podium, and my fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could see the slight tremor in them, the only outward sign of the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I leaned toward the microphone and spoke, my voice steady and clear. Yes, Dr. Thorne. There is an authorship ledger. It's an integrated diagnostics tool for tracking developmental milestones and ensuring code integrity. Then, with a quiet confidence that I didn't know I possessed, I typed the command. It was my mother's birthday and my start date at the company, a string of characters that spelled doom for Marcus Thorne. I hit enter. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, the slick, branded interface of the demo flickered and was replaced by a clean, stark, black and white screen. At the top, in simple, bold letters, were the words Project Chimera, Contribution, Authorship Ledger. The screen was filled with a chronological list of every major component, every module, every critical feature of the system we were there to showcase. And next to each one, in a column labeled Lead Architect, Developer, was a name, my name. Core Database Architecture, Veronica Hayes. Predictive Analytics Engine, VONE, Veronica Hayes. API Gateway Implementation, Veronica Hayes. Multi-threaded Query Processor, Veronica Hayes. The list went on and on, a digital testament to 6 years of my life. I scrolled down, my hand steady on the mouse. Finally, near the bottom, under a section titled Minor Contributions, was another name. Marcus Thorne. And next to his name, just 2 entries. Revised color palette for Q3 presentation slides, and requested new title for Marketing 1 sheet. The silence in the room was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the server rack in the corner. I didn't say a word. I just let the screen speak for me. The evidence was stark, irrefutable, and displayed in 10-foot high resolution for everyone to see. Mr. Pantes. Sterling, the powerful investor, slowly leaned forward, his eyes scanning the ledger on the screen. He then looked back at Marcus, who was standing frozen, the color completely drained from his face. Mr. Sterling's gaze settled on me. A slow, knowing smile spread across his lips. It was the smile of a man who had not only found the answer to his technical question, but had also witnessed the most elegant and brutal act of corporate justice he had ever seen. The house of cards had not just collapsed, it had been atomized. The immediate aftermath was a blur of controlled corporate chaos. Mr. Harris, the CEO, quickly stammered something about a profound misunderstanding and called for a brief recess. He and a few other executives practically frog-marched a catatonic Marcus Thorne out of the boardroom. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. The remaining Sterling Kane investors were murmuring to each other, pointing at the ledger still displayed on the massive screen. Mr. Sterling himself hadn't moved. He simply sat there, looking from the screen to me, that small, appreciative smile still on his face. Dr. Thorne walked over to me and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Well done, Veronica," she whispered. "Integrity with proof." After a few moments, Mr. Sterling stood up and walked directly to me, ignoring everyone else in the room. He extended a hand. "Veronica Hayes," he said, his handshake firm and his eyes full of respect. That was the single most impressive technical demonstration I have ever witnessed. Not for the code, which is clearly brilliant, but for the deployment of truth as a feature. "I have one more question for you, if you don't mind." I was still reeling, but I managed to nod. "The question I asked earlier," he said, his voice lowering slightly, "about the data serialization protocol and the latency bottleneck. What's the real answer?" And so, for the next 15 minutes, standing in front of my truth ledger, I walked the most powerful venture capitalist in our industry through the deepest, most complex parts of my system. I didn't use slides or a script. I just spoke, drawing diagrams on the virtual whiteboard, explaining the trade-offs I had made, the problems I had solved, and the future scalability I had built into the architecture. I wasn't selling anything, I was just sharing my work, my passion. It felt like a dam bursting. All the knowledge and expertise that Marcus had tried to suppress and steal was now flowing freely. When I finished, Mr. Sterling simply nodded. "Exactly as I'd hoped," he said. "A truly elegant solution." The executives eventually filed back into the room, their faces grim. Mr. Harris avoided looking at me. He announced that Mr. Thorne was no longer with the company and that they would like to reschedule the rest of the presentation. Mr. Sterling held up a hand. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Harris," he said coolly. "We've seen everything we need to see. We'll be in touch with our terms." The meeting was over. The Sterling Kane team packed up and left. As Mr. Sterling walked out, he paused at the door and looked back at me. He gave me a crisp nod and a wink. It was a clear signal. The game had been won. The fallout within Innovatech was swift and decisive. Marcus was, of course, fired for cause before he even made it back to his office. His reign of terror was over. The CEO, Mr. Harris, was deeply humiliated. The board of directors, spurred by a furious Dr. Thorne, launched an internal investigation into the culture of deception that had been allowed to fester under his leadership. He was stripped of much of his operational control. But the real change came a week later, in the form of a term sheet from Sterling Cain. Their offer to lead the Series C funding round was generous, more than the company had even hoped for. But it came with a set of non-negotiable conditions. There were several, but the first and most important one was stated in bold, unavoidable text. The investment is contingent upon the immediate promotion of Veronica Hayes to the position of Chief Technology Officer, with full autonomy over the engineering and product divisions of Innovatec. I was sitting at my desk, trying to process the events of the past week, when Mr. Harris and Dr. Thorne asked me to join them in the main boardroom, the very scene of my triumph. The offer letter from Sterling Cain was lying on the polished mahogany table. Mr. Harris looked uncomfortable, humbled. Dr. Thorne, on the other hand, was beaming. "It seems, Veronica," Mr. Harris began, clearing his throat, "that our investors have a very high opinion of your capabilities, as do we, of course. We would be honored if you would accept the position of Chief Technology Officer." I looked at the letter, then at Dr. Thorne. She gave me that same subtle nod she had given me before the presentation. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a mandate. It was the ultimate vindication. It was the chance to not only reclaim my own work, but to rebuild the company culture that Marcus had tried so hard to destroy. I accepted. My first act as CTO was to promote Liam. I called him into my new office, the one that used to be Marcus's. I had already had all the ostentatious, self-aggrandizing motivational posters taken down. Liam walked in nervously, not sure what to expect. "Liam," I said, "I'm creating a new role, Director of Engineering. I want you to be the first person to hold that title. You've shown more integrity and loyalty in the past year than I've seen from most senior executives. I need someone I can trust to help me fix this place." The look of shock and then pure joy on his face was one of the most rewarding moments of the entire ordeal. Together, we began the process of healing Innovatec. We flattened the convoluted hierarchy Marcus had built. We re-established a culture of transparency, meritocracy, and respect for technical expertise. We held town halls where engineers could speak freely without fear of political retribution. We brought the focus back from salesmanship to craftsmanship. We started building great things again, together. The company thrived. With the new funding and renewed purpose, Project Chimera became the industry standard, even more successful than I had dreamed. My name was on the patents. My face was in the articles about the company's incredible turnaround. I never set out to be a hero or a corporate warrior. I was just an engineer who loved to build things. But I learned that sometimes building things isn't enough. Sometimes you have to protect what you've built from those who would rather steal it than create anything themselves. My story became a quiet legend at the company, a cautionary tale against arrogance and a testament to the power of truth. The ledger, my secret weapon, became an official, permanent feature of our development process, a symbol of our commitment to recognizing and rewarding the real work. I never heard what happened to Marcus Thorne. I imagine he landed on his feet somewhere else, another company where he could spin his tales and charm his way up the ladder for a while. But I also know that his kind of success is always temporary. It's a house of cards, built on a foundation of lies, and eventually, a gust of wind, or a single line of code, will bring it all crashing down. My success was built on solid ground, on years of hard work, on a foundation of truth, and that's a structure that can withstand any storm. Have you ever had to fight for credit for your own work, or seen someone else's be stolen? Let me know your story in the comments below. And please, if you found this inspiring, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear that integrity, with proof, is the ultimate strategy.